Welcome in, everyone, to another edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, as always, Tommy Brzee. It is Tuesday, August 27th around here, and we have a great show for you today. We kind of have an in-between point between Week 0 and Week 1 today, so we'll get into, is the chaos of Week 0 going to follow to Week 1? I tend to believe the answer is going to be yes, so we'll go through all the big games and see how it could pinpoint how the chaos could really show up in those games. Then we'll get into Michigan. The NOA from the NCAA was delivered to them. Definitely going to be a lengthy process to figure out what the end-all be-all is here, but I can almost promise you it's not going to be necessarily what a lot of the Michigan haters, quote-unquote, want. Then we'll move on to a couple of the schedule changes that could be happening to college football over the next little bit. It could be a change in the portal window, also a change in possibly when Week 1 starts, so we'll get into that. Then we have a little bit of a recruiting update. It was a huge recruiting weekend, and as we get into the season, I tend to believe we're going to have a little bit less time for recruiting, so we'll get into that today. And then we'll do my top 12 as we head into the season. Thought I would do 12 instead of 10, make it a little bit more interesting. As we head into this season, I'll give you my top 12 for Week 1. But before we jump in, I do want to remind you all we get tons of questions and comments throughout the show, and the best way for you all to get your question on the screen, we can have a fun back and forth here, is to use the tip and donation link at the bottom of the screen, gsmcpodcast.net. It's a huge help not only to us here at the network, but to you all. You get to kind of have a fun, interactive experience here, and that's always good for the both of us. So if you'd like to use that, definitely use the super chat there. Also, you can use gsmcpodcast.net if that's a little bit easier for you. But sometimes it's just easy to click that little dollar sign at the bottom of the chat and leave any question or comment that you have. But let's go ahead and jump in here, and let's talk about all of the chaos that happened in Week 0. Is it going to follow to Week 1? Because there were a lot of double-digit favorites in Week 0, and none of them covered. Not a single one of them covered their spread, and I think it might just follow into Week 1. I know this season has been hyped up as one of chaos and one of craziness, and frankly, I think Week 1 is going to give us plenty of that. But I want to go through all of the top games. There are 5 games that really jump out in Week 1, and I want to go through those games and kind of give you an idea of where chaos could strike, what are the game in particular that definitely something crazy could happen, and where are we going to see all of this stuff from Week 0 kind of follow over to Week 1. And we'll start with the game that is going on in Atlanta this weekend, Georgia against Clemson. Georgia's favored by 13.5, over-under at 48.5, and this is a really interesting game. I think a lot of people going into this one are saying, well, Georgia's going to win, they're Georgia, this is Clemson. Clemson has so many questions from the last couple of years. Georgia has been a well-oiled machine since about 2020, really. So I think a lot of people are kind of writing this one off in a sense. But the reality is this one's going to be a little bit closer and is a little bit more sketchy for Georgia than I think some people are letting on. Because what if Georgia's D-line is a real issue? What if Phil Maffa in this Clemson running game can slow down this game, and kind of like Tech did to Florida State? What if they can slow down this game enough to where Georgia's offense doesn't have the ability to get their hands on the ball too often, and this Georgia D-line that is already a little bit suspect heading into the season is just leaned on for 4 quarters? If they just absolutely lean on him, Phil Maffa just bruises him up for 4 quarters, there's a reality where things get a little bit sketchy. And then you have the Clemson offense. You get that running game going, then maybe Cade Klubnik can find some passing lanes to find Bryant Wesco, to find TJ Moore, to find all of the electric wide receivers that they brought in. They are freshmen. This is going to be their first college football game, but at the end of the day, talent is talent. So if they can figure it out on that side of the ball and get those wide receivers going, then they might just be able to make this thing very interesting. And then UGA has been totally impenetrable in the regular season. Since 2020, they have not lost a regular season game. I believe they've won the last 39 regular season games. So if Clemson's going to be able to do this, a lot of stuff has to fall into place. I think we all understand that, especially in Atlanta, where you're going to be outnumbered quite a bit if you're a Clemson fan. Although maybe it's a little bit more even, but I would bet Georgia fans will 70-30 is probably my rough estimate there. But at the end of the day, Clemson has the ability to win this game. They have the ability absolutely to keep it close, because the way Clemson is going to win a lot of games this year is Phil Maffa is going to run the ball really effectively, and that defense is going to play the defense they should be able to play all year. So it's going to be really interesting. I think it's one of those games that we can look at and kind of scoff at and say Georgia's going to continue to roll and continue their role they've been on for the last couple of years, and a Week 1 game is not going to trip up Georgia. But at the end of the day, Clemson has a lot of things in place, and if a couple of those things that are a little bit questionable right now, if they come into place on week 1, things get really interesting in Atlanta very, very quickly. But moving forward here, Penn State, West Virginia is a really interesting one. Penn State only favored by 8.5 in this game, 51.5 over-under, and this is going to be a game that is going to be really interesting because the reality is Penn State is not going to be close to a finished product in this game. With new coordinators coming in, with a lot changing on the offensive line, with a lot changing on the defense, you're going to have a lot of differences between week 1 Penn State and week 13 Penn State. Doesn't mean it's not going to be a really good team walking into Morgantown, but there's a chance that they come out just a little bit flat, and all of the different changes that have gone on this offseason definitely take a little bit of a toll. And frankly, on the other side, you have a West Virginia team that is very veteran, knows exactly what they want to do, and is frankly going to play a relatively simple game. They're going to run the ball really aggressively with C.J. Donaldson and Jaheim White. They're going to be able to do that, and you also have Garrett Green that's also a running threat at any point. So they have the ability to, again, slow this game down. That's going to be the way that a lot of these underdogs find a way to win, is just slow the game down. Just make it tougher on the other offense to get moving and get going. And this Penn State offense, as we know, if it doesn't get going, then it looks pretty ugly in a hurry. So I do think this West Virginia team has a way to cause problems at the very least. And one of those things, if you have a guy like Garrett Green, you're down to the fourth quarter, only down by 7 or 3 points, you're very much in this game. So this is the one that I'm circling probably the most out of the Big Five, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. Moving on to Miami at Florida, this is one that I don't know if there's a real upset scenario. Obviously, Miami's favored by 2.5 points, but if Florida were to win, I wouldn't necessarily call that a huge upset. I think people would out there in the national media or whatever, but at the end of the day, this Florida team is very talented. They're obviously an SEC roster. They have incredible things going for them, so I don't think it would be all that crazy, and it's in Gainesville, which obviously helps. So it's going to be one of those things where what happens, what is the chaos potential of this game is kind of the question we need to answer. And the biggest thing here is, what if Florida comes out and wins by 14? What if they come out and just absolutely dominate the line of scrimmage, they push Miami over, and they end up winning by 10, 14 points? I feel like we have to have a conversation both directions, where Miami brought in all of this talent on the defensive line to shore up that group. If that group gets pushed around in week 1 by a Florida offensive line that is going to be a good group, but not necessarily the most elite in the country or even the most elite that Miami's going to see this year, they're going to have a lot of stuff to figure out. And it could be one of those things where we talk about, Miami, Florida State, Clemson. All 3 of those teams could have a loss walking out of this week, and it would be a very, very interesting ACC race going forward. Obviously, Florida State's would be the worst of the bunch because it is a conference loss, but at the end of the day, this is going to be a very interesting game, and this is going to be a game where you're going to get a ton of overreactions. Everyone's going to come out of this game saying either Florida is terrible and Billy Napier should be fired, or Miami is a fraud and Mario Cristobal doesn't know what he's doing. I can almost promise you of that. So it's going to be one of those games that maybe there isn't a huge upset potential or anything crazy like that, but chaos can definitely come for this game. I can promise you. Moving on to Notre Dame, Texas A&M. Another one that, where you might not have a huge upset. A&M is favored by 3 points. They are at home, so Notre Dame coming in there and getting a win would be huge. But at the end of the day, Notre Dame's ranked 7, A&M's ranked 20, so I don't know if anyone would really call that too big of an upset. But at the end of the day, I think when you look at this game, it's another game that's going to have big-time implications when you go to the playoff, because you have an A&M team that is going to play a number of teams in the SEC, and you have a Notre Dame team that, frankly, if they don't win this one, they are walking a little bit of a tightrope to get to the playoff, because I've talked about this on here before. I think 10-2 should not get Notre Dame in. Maybe it will at the end of the day, but if they lose to A&M and they lose to Florida State, I would not put Notre Dame in. So you're getting into a game that has chaos baked in from the get-go, because it has CFP implications because it's Notre Dame. So it's going to be really interesting to watch this one unfold, and I think at the end of the day, when you walk out of this game, whoever wins it is going to be looking at the playoff as a real possibility. Notre Dame is going to feel like we just got to handle business going forward. Beat the teams we're supposed to beat. You could lose that Florida State game and still go to the playoff. And Texas A&M is going to be saying, we just beat a top 10 team. We have a great home atmosphere. We have a quarterback that, if they win this game, is likely rolling. So it's going to be one of those games where, at the very least, you're coming out of it with one team that is definitely reeling a little bit and trying to figure figure out where they stand going into the meat of the season, and then one team that is firmly looking at the college football playoff as a real possibility this upcoming year. And then the last one, this is another overreaction special. This is going to be as big of an overreaction as you will see this weekend, I can almost promise you. LSU is favored by 4 points as of right now. It's going to be a really interesting game. But at the end of the day, the only chaos that can really happen in this game, because a lot of us think, it's going to be passing the ball all over the field. These defenses that have a lot to fix are not going to be able to fix it in week one. So we're going to see, 63.5 is the over-under. So it gives you an idea of what we expect to see in this game. But what if one defense just rolls? What if the Garrett Nussmeier turnover issues that were happening in fall camp roll into week one and this USC defense looks really opportunistic and they make a couple of big plays and end up putting themselves in a position to win it, and not only win it, but hold LSU to 21, 28 points, what have you? That would totally change the complexion of that team. You would look at USC, I've been talking about them as possibly jumping from, I believe they were 120 in total defense last year to about 70. That would change to about 50 or maybe even 40, because this is a high-powered offense on both sides of the ball, and if either of these defenses can even stifle them a little bit, I think you're having a very interesting conversation. But the reality is we're probably going to see a lot of points. We're probably going to see a ton of different up and down plays and not so great of defense. And on the other side of that, I think we could see whatever winning quarterback comes out of this, you're looking at them as the Heisman favorite, and that doesn't necessarily mean too much after week one, but definitely something that they can build off of. And I have a good feeling that both of the numbers from these guys are going to be pretty gaudy on Saturday, and we're going to have a number of overreactions saying this LSU defense hasn't made any progress, or the USC defense hasn't made any progress, or this LSU offense isn't where it was a year ago, or the same thing for USC. So it's going to be really interesting to watch that unfold, and I have a feeling that overreactions are going to be just all over the place when this game comes around. But that doesn't even include games when you talk about Florida State Boston College on Monday is very sketchy, and one that Florida State just gotta win, no doubt about it. North Dakota State against Colorado is one we'll break down tomorrow. We'll get into all the predictions tomorrow, so we'll break down that one tomorrow. Definitely a really interesting one. Texas against Colorado State is a little bit under the radar, but a little bit more sketchy for the Longhorns than I think some people think. Oklahoma State at South Dakota State, Syracuse versus Ohio. There are a number of games that are going to be really interesting, but if I had to pick one to add the chaos to this week, it's got to be Penn State against West Virginia. It's got to be that game in Morgantown, because that is a scary atmosphere and one that gets very, very interesting. What's going on, Wolverine Gage? Nice to see you. Glad to have you here. But that Penn State-West Virginia game, it can get really interesting because West Virginia knows exactly what they want to do, and Penn State is probably still trying to figure out exactly what their identity is going to be on offense and exactly what they're going to be on defense. So maybe they go into Morgantown and take a loss. Now, it doesn't necessarily change the outlook on their overall season, but definitely starts them off on the wrong foot. So I tend to believe that chaos is going to follow us throughout the entire season. It's not going to stop in week one, and it won't stop until probably the ball is dropped for the national championship. So it's going to be incredible to watch that unfold. I think there's a number of places for this thing to go a little bit crazy this upcoming weekend. But let's take our first break here, and when we come back, we are going to talk about Michigan. We're going to get into the NOA, break down exactly what was said. It was pretty much what was said about 3 weeks ago, and break down how you're not going to get a hammer down on Michigan by any means. So I'll break that down right after this, so stick with us.